Hi, and welcome to Microsoft Flight Simulator 2020. In today's video, we're going to have a look at doing an RNAV approach. Now, I think the RNAV approach is a little bit easier than the ILS. The objective here is to have fun. So once you know how to do the basics of an RNAV, you can then go off and learn more. But our objective is just to show you the basics of how to get it to operate. Just a quick tip, if you're looking on the map and having difficulty trying to find the airports, you can always open filters, you can get rid of the clouds, so then you can start to see the map a lot easier. But you can also go up here, change the background map to IFR, and if you go and have a look now at the map, you can notice there's white dots everywhere. There's all our airports. So hopefully that might make it easier for you guys if you're just trying to wonder where on earth are all the airports. I'm going to do a flight today from Broome International Airport in Western Australia. We're going to set that as the departure. I'm going to take a flight down to Port Headland International Airport as the arrival. So you can see what I'm doing in the map options here as well in this video. I'm going to select low altitude airways. And it's a fairly short flight. The interesting thing is we're going to be coming in off the ocean. Now, Port Hedland's International Airport does not have an ILS option. So if we click on approach, you'll notice there's no ILS option. So what do? So we've got RNAV, and that's what I'm going to show you. So we've got RNAV 14Z. We'll choose that one. And we'll have a quick look and see what it's doing. So it's going to come around here and then come in off the ocean to land. We'll choose a parking spot. We'll try parking spot 12. I'm not sure where that is, but that should be fine. And then we'll click fly. But you can see what I've done here to set it up from the menus. I'm going to click fly. So now I have 14Z approach to Port Headland. If you want to test this approach out yourself, it's a good approach to try because it's coming in off the ocean. You don't have to worry about flying into a mountain or something like that. It's not a big increase above sea level either, so we don't have any major altitude issues. I'll do the cold and dark start so you can see that as well. Maybe I have a few more things to say. We're pretty similar to last time. The big thing with this is I realize there is a checklist, so it is a lot of steps. Please don't be intimidated. This plane is not as difficult as it seems, so do give it a go. It's a really, really fun plane to fly. Let's jump in the cockpit and I'm going to get started. I'm just going to get the yoke disappear. I'm going to click on all these switches here all the way through. The inert sept I told you guys to leave. Basically, the inert sept is just to save the engine, so if there's birds or something like that, you turn it on and it stops birds going into the engine. But I don't know about you guys, but I haven't seen many birds in the game. We're just using the simulator here. And so when they go up to 4,000, they go and turn it off, and then they can open it up so that the engine can get what it needs. But yeah, if you want to simulate that, you can. It's basically to stop debris and birds from getting into the engine. That's my understanding. So hopefully that might give you some background. We've got bleed. I'm going to turn that to on. And we're going to have a look up to the very roof up here. And I'm just going to move the crash bar up. I'm going to click once on set battery, one left click on main generator, one left click on starter. You'll notice it goes back to off by itself. That's fine. One left click on auto for fuel select, and two left clicks on auto P trim, AP trim. If the autopilot's not working, it's because this isn't on. So we'll go down to here. I'm just going to push F3 in the keyboard to put it into low idle. Now, I've been trying to look at the keyboard commands to see if there's some other way I can do this throttle control. I'm using a Thrustmaster Warthog joystick and throttle, and I haven't really found a good way yet. What I've told you guys to do is to have a look up here, look at the two white triangles, make sure they're both in the green. When they're both in the green, we can move this to high idle. So if you can move it to high idle, that's great. I'm just going to tap F3 a few times until we can get it to high idle. And it looks like it's up towards high idle now. There we go, high idle. We should be okay. We're just waiting for the ITT to pop up on the screen and be flashing as a bar, and then we'll bring it back across to taxi. So there's the ITT in the white bar. So I'm just going to bring it across to taxi. There we go, we're in taxi, and we're not going to go anywhere because we're in taxi. So that's good. We can take our parking brake off as a final step. And we've got the inert stepped on. So when we go up to 4,000 on this flight, we will hit that switch and we'll turn that off. Okay, but just at the moment, we're going to leave that in the on position for today. This guy wants to push me back for some reason. I wish it wouldn't do that automatically. I wish the game required you to request that service. But anyway, they're going ahead and done that. I'm not sure where it's going to ask me to go to today. We'll have a look from this parking spot. Some other things we can put on our taxi light, we can put on these 3 lights, and we can put on those 3 lights. So when we get into the air, we're going to put the taxi lights off. We're going to turn off inert SEP button. But the other thing I want to prepare is just altitude. So at the moment it's not set to anything, it's 0. I'm just going to make it like 9,000 or 8,000, something like that. 5, 6, 7, 8, let's make it 9. Got 9,000. The rest of it we don't need to set at this point in time. What we can have a look at is we can see that we've got a flight plan, MFD and flight plan. It won't give us a lot of information at the moment. If I drag it down, you'll notice it doesn't have a lot of information. When we get up in the air, you'll notice there's more information in here. So if you're wondering why it's not all there for the approach at this point while you're on the ground, that is why you have to wait until you're in the air. Okay, so let's move ourselves around. It's telling us to go out to that way, and then we'll get ready and hold. Now I've got the automatic ATC on, but it's good just to have a look at what it's telling you. So it's telling me to go to runway 28 and taxi and then hold short. So we just wait there, and then we'll come back to this screen and it will give us information on flight clearance. Just taxi along slowly. Really good plane, this one. It is very responsive. It has a lot of power, I would say. It can go quite quickly, but it can also stop quite slowly. It can come down to around about 80. If you're wondering our takeoff speed and our landing speed, that's easy to remember. You can remember the number 80. You can take off around about 80, and you can also land around about 80. But more likely we can start pulling back around about 70, and you want to be landing at around about 90. You won't have any problems. Just a guide, just with the intention of having fun, just to get you started. Once you know that, then you can go off and learn what the real procedures are. Okay, so we're holding up to here, and I'm going to just check our air traffic control. So it's told us to hold short. I'm hoping it will now say we're ready to go. We've just told the tower we're sort of ready. And what does the tower want to say? Clear for takeoff on runway 28. Thank you very much. We're out of here. So I'm just going to, I'll scroll my view. I want to change to this view. That's a lot better for me. You can also push spacebar sometimes and look up. Again, if you're wondering where the center line is, putting it around about here. So if we go and have a look outside, you'll notice we're fairly close to the center. A little bit more over. But that's where you're looking for the white line. So I'm putting it to full throttle. And we'll get our plane up into the sky. We've only got the inert SEP warning light coming on for at the moment. 60. Again, if you have a look at where we are on the line, can you see? I'm going to pull back around at 80. Gently pulling back. Just keeping it under 10. Pushing G on the keyboard to bring the gear up. We can watch the gear come up and we can see us taking off, which is very, very cool. Little country town, Broome, Australia. And then we know we've got to turn left, so we'll just gradually turn left a little bit, which will help the autopilot once we activate it. We're around about 1,000 at the moment. We'll turn it off around 2,000, but I think in real life they use about 4,000 or so. Whatever height birds don't fly. So I'll turn it off now, and we'll also turn off our light for landing and takeoff and taxi. So I'm going to hit now up here the AP for autopilot, engage autopilot, and then I'm going to click nav. Now we also set up our altitude hold before, so all I need to do there is click VS. Is the plane going to turn? Or what is it doing? Change that to FMS under PFD home. Now it's changing that. So this will now follow that path. And up here we've got VS. I'm going to turn the VS on. I'm just going to make sure that it's set in a up mode. So I don't know, somewhere around there. And it'll take us up to 9,000. The plane will by itself now get the autopilot and get the nav and take us towards the line and follow this line. We've got plenty of time for it to do that. And we've got our nav source here. I got a little bit spun out because I'm trying to show you guys this flight plan, but if we now have a look at our flight plan information and drag it down, you'll notice down here we've got all our approach information. So this is an important part with RNAV. Now what we want to look at with RNAV and the approach for RNAV 14Z is we're going down to the very bottom and we want to look at the altitude. So this is for the runway, and this is the one just before the runway, the 1750 feet. That 1750 feet is important because that means it wants us to be at 1750 feet of this waypoint. So if we go a little zoom out and we'll go have a look ahead of where we are going to be going, we can see our runways down here and PPDNF is here. So what it's telling us is that 1750 feet PPDF, we need to be at that altitude. So what we could do is we could set our altitude to 1600 feet, and I'll show you when we're looking on up here, but we'll notice that our altitude will be a little bit below what this little pink square is for the glide slope. So that means after we hit approach, what will happen is it'll see that we are below the required height, and as the glide slope comes down, when it catches us at 1600, it will drag us all the way down the rest of the way to the runway. Now why this is easier than the ILS is before we were having to go in and we had to worry about our comms radios. So we had to go into navcom, we had to into audio com, we had to look up correct navigation, and we had to make sure we entered all our numbers in. We don't have to do any of those steps with this, okay? So now all we have to do is looking at our flight plan information and looking at this number, which is for our altitude where we need to be. Now with RNAV, they have approach charts which tell them as they're coming up to the runway, they need to be at this altitude at this point, they need to be at this altitude at this point, they need to be at this altitude at this point, they need to be at this altitude at this point. So they're slowly coming down according to all of these altitudes. The important part for us, just as far as learning, and before we're pushing the approach button, is just trying to show you how it would work. Once you've done that, then you can look up the approach charts and you can go and fly them, accurately as much as you want. But I just want to show you how it actually activates and how it works, because If you only know ILS and you see RNAV and you don't know what to do, this will get you that far. Just some other things. When you were talking about ILS before, you can look up the ILS information for airports just online on the internet. But say you don't have the internet or you don't want to look it up on a web page somewhere and you just want to find out that information, you can actually find all that information in here. So say I put waypoint info, I can click on airport. Let's go back so you can see all the ways. You're clicking on MFD, the button here next to MFD, click on waypoint info, then click on airport. Okay, so in here you can now select airport. So we can put YSSY for instance, and then push enter. So this should be Sydney International Airport. Now Sydney International Airport has a bunch of information along the side and the left here. But the interesting bit is we've got FREQS. If we click that and we now scroll down, we should be able to see the ILS information. Can you see that? And you can do this for every runway in the game or in the world, especially what's in the game, because we just need to know that code for that runway. So YSSY was Sydney International Airport. I just knew that off the top of my head, but you can get that information from the map, and you come back into here, type in that number, and then you can get all that ILS information. So if you want to run land on ILS runway 7, you can do that here. And that's where you can get that information without having to go to a web page and look it up. This is a good way of getting that information. So hopefully that's useful to you. I'll just go through that again. You can go into MFD. You can click on waypoint info. You can click on airport. And then in here you can click on frequencies. And if you scroll down, you can see all the frequencies and the numbers next to them. And this is what you're going to be putting in to comm radios with an ILS landing. But again, as I say, we don't have to do that today. And if you haven't seen the ILS video, please do check that out. So you can also see the runways and how long the runway is, a bunch of information that's quite useful to know. So yep, that's that. I was talking about winds, I think last time. You can put wind information up here. You can get that two ways. You can get it from there and you can also get it from up here. You can click on weather and you can change your weather for up here. But you can also put the wind information up here. So let's have a look. It is in here and it's not that hard to find. PFD settings, do you see that? So we go to PFD, we click on this button here, and we click on PFD settings, and then we click on next to wind, it has on, and we can choose option 3. And so that's one way. And when you look up here, we can now have a little box here which tells us where the winds are coming from and what speed. So it doesn't come up by default. Now you can also do that on here, which I was trying to look for this before. So if we clicked on PFD settings, we left clicked once here, you can now notice other PFD settings is probably under that. And then here you've got wind, you left click again, and then you've got option 3. Okay, so there's a whole bunch of clicks. I'll try and go through that just so you can see. This is probably the easier way. Just click, they do the same thing. PFD, then you click on PFD settings and you've got wind straight away and you can choose, whatever option. You've got 3 options. I just select 3 usually. But you can also go up here, click PFD settings here. You can then click on other PFD settings. Then you can click on wind, and then you've got option 1, 2, and 3, and you can see them change up here. So you can do it 2 ways, but just useful. I didn't mention that in the last video, and it's handy to know, so you know when you're flying into the wind or out of the wind. The other thing is, when you're looking at here, this is your true airspeed. So that's your speed that you're traveling in the wind. So you might have a headwind coming on at you. That will slow you down. And so that becomes your ground speed. So if your true airspeed is 250 and you've got an incoming wind of 20 knots coming at you, your ground speed is going to be like 230. And you get the 250, you take the wind speed that's coming at you, and then that gives you your ground speed. Okay, so that's how the two important figures here are relating to each other. This is your true airspeed, that is the speed you're traveling through in the wind. You could get that if you were in a balloon and you had a radar gun and you watched the plane come past you while you're in the balloon. That would be your true airspeed. If you're on the ground with a radar speed gun and the plane came past you and you recorded the speed, that is what the ground speed is. Okay, so hopefully that makes that a little bit clearer. But I'm just explaining that in relation to the weather information here, so you understand that when it says this is where the wind is coming from and what the speed of it is, that will give you a bit of an understanding as to how that relates to your true airspeed and your ground speed. I just want to have a quick look on external view because we're doing everything wrong here. Can you see we haven't got the gear in? So this is the problem when I'm trying to record a video and explain things to you guys. I'm not thinking about everything else. Now, a whole bunch of things were wrong with that takeoff. The other thing we could have done was we could have put flaps into takeoff mode. So before we took off, flaps to take off, please do that. And also make sure you get your gear in way earlier than that because we're going to damage the gear. I think it has information on your gear here. I could re-record the whole video and just make sure I got my gear in, but I think it's more important at the moment for you guys to actually understand the aspects of what I'm explaining with the ILS and the RNAV. Please put the gear in. I don't want the gear out anymore. Very good. Okay, so we did some things. We turned off this light and we turned off this, but I got into trying to explain all this stuff to you. So yeah, there was that. Okay, so it's got us up to 9,000. Just to explain again how you can use the autopilot to change your altitude, we first go to here and we're just going to change the number. I just hover it above it with the mouse, then use the mouse wheel to hover it around. I'm going to change it to 8,000. It'll do nothing until I click VS, and it'll still do nothing because I haven't told it how much I want to incline or decline by. In this case, I want to decline to 8,000. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to push on the down, decrease vertical speed. I'm going to tap that twice, and it's now going to decline at this rate per minute, 550, down to 8,000. You can always see what the active thing the plane is doing from up here. FMS, autopilot mode, and VS alts. So just always keep that in mind, that information up here. This is the essentials so that you know what the plane's doing. It's telling me that at the moment we can put on the yaw damper, so we can click that. As you can see, the plane's going to follow, if nothing else, the plane's going to follow this line whether you put that yaw damper on or not, okay? So just keep that in mind if you're wondering. It's not critical to get the plane to follow this line. If you're just trying to learn how to get the plane to follow this line, that's not critical. What was critical and what I really want to point out to you guys is making sure that you come down here. So under PFD, left click on this button next to that, and then under PFD home it has nav source. You need to change this until it says FMS, okay? You want to say FMS in here. There is another way to change it, so you don't necessarily have to look in here. There is another way to change it. You can change it up here as well. So if we go back, you'll see here it says active nav. If you click the button below active nav, just here, you'll notice I can change between them and I can put it to FMS, okay? So because I changed that, every time I do that, it's going to take off the follow mode here. So I've got to click the nav button again to re-enable it because I've just asked it to disable when I clicked here. Disable, you'll notice it's gone. And then I go back to put it in what I want it to be. It still won't do anything until I go back up here and I click nav. So now I click nav and now it's going to follow the FMS as the guidance. So some important things we knew before, because we're just trying to show you the RNAV approach. I think I've discussed enough of that's not RNAV now. We're going to go to the flight plan and we can see we're going from Bream International to Port Headland and we're going to be using the approach RNAV 14Z, and we know that at this altitude here, we need to be at 1750. So it's recommending at PPDNI, we need to be at 3000. And at PPDNF, we need to be at 1750. For this demonstration, what I'm going to do is I'm going to make sure I'm actually at 1600 by PPDNF. Now let's go have a look at the map. So over here, well, we got PPDNI. So it's saying at PPDNI we are at 3,000, and then at PPDNF we're at that 1750, and then we're coming in straight for landing. So we're going to activate our approach mode at PPDNI, just past PPDNI. I'm going to be sitting at about 6,000 with this demonstration at PPDNI, and we're going to hit the approach mode. I'm going to take the alt hold off, and what we will watch is we're going to be looking at the glide slope information. Now we should see that we are below the glide slope information when we are sitting at well, that marker there. If I can zoom out so it's a bit clearer, we should be below the glide slope information for 1750 around about here as soon as we start having a look, because we'll be at 6,000. When it gets to PPDNF, it will then see us and it will drag us down to the runway from 6,000 all the way down. That won't be me doing that. What we do need to do, and what will be me doing something, will be this. We will be adjusting our throttle to keep our speed stable. We'll try and keep our speed about 120, and we'll bring the speed down as needed. And we're also going to be activating our gear, and we'll also be activating our flaps. So that's the things we're going to be doing. We're going to be doing the flaps, we're going to be doing the gear, we're going to be very on top of our throttle, keeping an eye on our actual speed, our airspeed. So they're the three things we're going to do. As far as the buttons we need to push, well, before we had to change out of the active nav mode. I've gone and changed it again on you guys. But in this case example, the important thing to remember is with an RNAV approach, we are leaving the active nav in FMS mode. We do not change it from FMS. So now for the rest of the flight, without me having to demonstrate something to you guys, it should stay in FMS, okay? So normally on a flight like this, it's just FMS the whole way. You can leave it in FMS mode. You don't need to be changing it to anything else. But I just thought I'd explain those other options to you so it's a little bit clearer what's going on. You've got multiple ways of changing it to FMS, and you do need to change it initially to FMS to get yourself on that autopilot working, to get the plane following that line. So you can see it'll now go back to this line, it'll start following that line along. So there's a bunch of things. I'm just going to give myself a few seconds to breathe, and we'll have a look at the plane outside. So we made it back. We haven't got much weather, as you can tell, so there's not a lot there. But what I did mention, if you haven't seen the other video, is with this screen, just change it back to map. So I've got a map back. What you can do, both these buttons here are functional, okay? But what I just want to point out is this map is very zoomed in at the moment. You can go, just make sure on the MFD page, left click once here for MFD, and then hover above this button, and you can change the zoom. So just use your mouse wheel, and you can change the zoom. So now you can see a much better perspective of where our plane is in relation to where we're going. Just handy to know because, yeah, this button works. They're not just there for looks. Both these buttons work in this plane. They do something. So that's cool to know. As far as the cold and dark start went, just 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Turned them all on. Then I went up to here and I put on the bleed. I've explained the inert sept. You can turn that on or off as you want. You probably will want to turn it on and then turn it off once you get up to 4,000 if you want to simulate what they would do closer to real life. Then we're going to move the bar up. Once on source, once on generator, once on starter. Just be aware it'll click back to off by itself. That's fine. You go to fuel select, you click once on the auto, and you click twice to put it on for auto trim. Your autopilot will not work if it is not on. So all that other information I was telling you with like making sure the FMS mode is on and all that to make sure it follows this line, it'll do none of that if up here this is not on. So that needs to be on. So that's why we're doing it in the cold and dark start process. 1-2 clicks and we're putting it in on and it's ready to go. Okay, so there's all that. Then I'm just trying to get this throttle to the low idle, F3. Then you put it from low idle to high idle, and then you are keeping an eye on those two white triangles at the low idle stage. Once they're both in the green, you can put it in the high idle. But for it to go out of high idle to taxi, you were looking up here for the flashing ITT bar. It should say in big red buttons with white letters on the side, ITT, and then that's when you can move it across to taxi, and then you're ready to go. The only last step really for there is to turn off your parking brake so that you can move. But besides that, you're pretty good. Once you're up in the air, you can turn off your inert sept. If you want for takeoff, you can make sure you've got your taxi light on while you're going around. You can turn on all your lights. You also have oxygen up here if you're going really high, so just be aware of that. It will tell you. We haven't gone so high for it to tell us anything, but it will tell you here, oxygen required. And so you've got a couple of buttons here that you can use. I believe the bleed air is also associated with that. It's sitting on auto. And you've also got these lights up here that you can turn on, co-pilot lights if you need light at night. So there's a whole bunch of things. As for the RNAV approach, we are going to be looking at MFD and clicking flight plan. Under flight plan, we can then scroll through the flight plan. We can see where we're leaving and coming to. You can enter it in manually if you want. Obviously we did it in the menu, but we're going to do the approach at RNAV 14Z, and I'm always just looking for, when it's an RNAV approach, the information down the bottom. I want to know what this number is. It's a 1750 and what that PPD NF, what that code is, so that when I look here, when I look over here, I know that I need to be at 1750 by PPDNF for this to work, for the RNAV to connect and for it to take us down to the runway. So the GPS will give us the guidance down. You don't have to worry about the radios on this one, and that's why I call it a little bit easier. You also got the timer that you can put on here, your timer mode, and that timer comes up here, which is really cool in theory. Got the outside temperature today of 13 degrees Celsius. One other thing I can mention to you guys, I do have a Tobii Eye Tracker 5, and I have got it working with Microsoft Flight Simulator 2020. The thing is, it doesn't have native direct support, and it doesn't work with the eye tracking, it only works with the head tracking. I've made a video showing it, and I haven't released it or uploaded it. I don't know if I'm going to upload it or not, but instructions on how to get the Tobii Eye Tracker 5 are in the Microsoft forums. It is functional with the head tracking. It works pretty similarly to Track IR5. It works brilliantly, the Tobii Eye Tracker 5 with DCS, Digital Combat Simulator, and also IL2 Stomovic. But at the moment, unless Microsoft are going to talk to Tobii and Tobii talk to Microsoft, I think it's really in the hands of Microsoft, Asobo, and Zendesk at this point, if they want to put support of it natively into their game. It shouldn't be too much work because they've already got Track IR5 working, and the Tobii Eye Tracker 5 is just superior. If you can do eye tracking, it just makes it so much easier. So I have done a couple of cold and dark starts with it. It is functional just with the head tracking, so you can at least use it. really doesn't make much difference to me because I have track IR5 support anyway. Like I've got a track IR5. I also have a Tobii iTracker 5. So I have seen both of them. I really prefer the Tobii iTracker 5. It just works so much better. And so I have got it working in this game. But yeah, I haven't talked about it or released a video on it at this point in time. But I have got it going. I don't know if I can recommend it until really Microsoft put direct support into the game. Then I'll probably talk about it in more depth and say, look, get this. It is fantastic. It is a good option if you're looking for head tracking and you're looking for an option, then the Tobii iTracker 5 is great. But that support is not there yet. So I'm not going to do too much more other than just say that I have got it working and operational. So we're coming along here at the moment. We're around about halfway. We're just sitting at 8,000. I'll just practice. We'll just put ourselves up to 9,000. So we're just going to change this number up here to 9,000. I'm going to click on VS. I'm going to click on up. You'll notice it'll take us up. Once we get up to 9,000, I'm actually going to do the descent. So we'll take ourselves back down to get us ready for our RNAV approach. And I'll actually enter in a number of 1,600. We've got no mountains or anything like that on the way here, so we've got no problems going nice and low. In real life, obviously, I would not be doing this. But we're just trying to demonstrate the process of an RNAV. And then you can go from there and understand how to do other aspects of the plane. But you've got enough to at least fly the plane in simulation, which will be good. One of my favorite views with the camera is in the showcase. You can click on fixed, I think in number 4, external, and then 4. It's very strange. There we go, 4. See, I said 4, but anyway, showcase and then external 4. Maybe you just click it twice and it does something. No. Anyway, this is one of my favorite views. You can see from the bottom of the plane what's up ahead. At the moment, obviously, we just got clear skies and a lot of water. I'm going to go back to camera, click on cockpit, and I'm going to click on pilot and landing. So that will give us the ability to look all the way around. Nothing I need to click up here, but I could put on our landing lights. So we'll click twice and put our landing light on. It's very early. Again, you wouldn't be doing it this early, but I'm preparing super early. You'll notice it's got us up to 9,000. The VS mode goes off as soon as it gets to 9,000 and switches back to altitude hold mode. The approach, autopilot, yaw damper, and the nav mode is on. Now to explain what we're going to be doing, we're basically reducing that altitude to 1,600, and then the only things I'm going to have to do this time is click approach and click alt hold mode off, and that's all I'm going to do. I'm just going to click approach and alt hold mode off, and then when it gets to that point, the plane will actually bring us down to 1,600 all the way down to the runway, and we'll demonstrate how it is doing that with the glide slope information over here. At the moment, you can see it's got glide slope and it's got a dot. Now, obviously, the dot is way down below because we're sitting at 9,000. When we get down to 1,600, the dot's actually going to be a little bit above us. Okay, I'm doing that for demonstration purposes. So you can see that dot come down to us at 1,600, and then from 1,600, without me doing anything, it's going to drag us down all the way to the runway. So that's why I think it's a little bit easier than ILS, because we don't have to worry about any of the radios with this one. All we have to do at this point is click approach, and we can take the altitude hold mode off. So that's all we're having to do. You could put the intercept on again if you want, because you're coming down low and you're worried about birds. That's an option. In fact, we might do that on this video because we've talked about it so much. As we come down, still quite high at the moment, so that's okay. But we will begin our descent. So I'm going to change this now. We'll bring it down initially just to 2,000. There we go, 2000. Now again, like I say, with the approach plates, they would have in real life, I need to be at this altitude at this point, this altitude at this point, this altitude at this point. Just for the demonstration, I'm just trying to show you guys how it works. So I'm going down to 2000. Just putting on vertical sync, and we're going to decrease. We're beginning that descent now. It should be something like 1,000 or so. Yeah, there's 1,000. There, we're good. And it's spinning down now. Now just keep an eye always on your speed, because if you're going to decrease, that speed's going to go up. So you can bring that throttle back a little bit. It's quite a quick plane. We're going at 285 knots. Outside air temperature today is 11 degrees. We hope you're enjoying your flight. You can normally notify the passengers what the temperature is at the arrival location, I think. If anyone has any idea what this button does, the CB light, please let me know in the comments, because I haven't physically seen it do anything. So yeah. Oh, hang on, look down here. Is that lighting up when I click this button? I think it is. Look at that. It's lit up. And if I turn it off, well, there you go. Thanks for that information, guys. I've got my answer. So that's what that button does. So this button here is it's at least lighting up this, but we can see the cab bleed and cab button or something. But yeah, it says CB light. We'll turn that off. And if I hover above it, it says circuit breaker light. Okay, so that makes sense. This is all the circuit breakers. And if you want to put the light on so you can see it easier, whack that and you can see it there. That's just an extra bit of light you can have, especially if you're doing a night flight. Awesome. Okay, so that's what that button does. We'll just watch our altitude here. We'll go down to 7,000. We've still got quite a way. We'll have a look at our fuel. Up the top, if we click our fuel, we've got 37%. 37%. So we've got plenty, because we are past halfway pretty much, and we've still got over 25% fuel. So we've got no problems. 6,000. It's coming down. So we can see at PPD and I, it wants us to be around about 3,000. If we want, we can maybe just change it to 3,000 for a moment. Get it to 3,000, and I'll drop that further a little bit to 1,600. So we're getting down to that altitude. We've got a little way to go. Things happened quite quickly in this plane. So that's the only real thing, or the advantage of flying a Cessna 152 or 172. Everything is a lot slower. You have more time to react and think about what you're doing. When you're flying this plane, everything is happening a little bit quicker. But it is quite useful still, I think, because you can slow this plane down very quickly, and it will actually do a landing speed of like 85 or so. So it can land pretty much anywhere the Cessna can. It's a pretty amazing plane, very fast, a lot of power, but it can still land very, very slowly, which can open up the opportunities to land at a whole bunch of runways in the game. Outside air temperature is coming down up, of course, as we lower altitude, now 19 degrees. Coming down to 3,000. When we get to 3,000, I'm going to further tell it to go all the way down to 1,600 in preparation for showing you how RNAV will work. Really wanted to explain this glide slope to you guys so you can see this, and then it's a little bit above us and it will come towards where we are, our current altitude, and it will, when it catches us at 1,600, it will drag us from 1,600 all the way down to the runway. And that's without any comm information being put in or any of those other issues worrying about you've got the right comm radio selected. Don't have to look at bearing information. Don't have to look at this data field, for instance. This data field is going to be empty on this whole flight. There's going to be no data, okay? That's probably the biggest difference that you'd notice with RNAV when flying this plane in the simulator as a game, that there will be no data in there. So before I was telling you it was really important with an ILS approach. We're not going to be able to do anything unless we have any data in here. But in this case, we've got no data. And the other thing is the active nav stays on FMS the whole time. No need to change. How cool is that? You may get to a point where, you know what, I'm not going to do an ILS approach. I'm just going to do an FMS approach. I'm going to look for the RNAV option. I'm going to do an RNAV approach on the runway, and that's cool. If you want to do that for fun, that's good too. But we just want to give you those options, and obviously ILS is needing you to know what those numbers are. So you even now know how to look up those numbers within here. You can click on the waypoint info, you can click your airport, and you can look up your airports. So you can get all that under the frequencies here, and you can get all of the frequency numbers. So you've learned quite a bit if you have followed this video and you didn't know that already. There is many videos out there, but they just don't make it clear how to do a lot of these functions. You can sit there and listen so closely and have no idea what they're going on about. They're just not explaining. We want to know how it works in a simulator in this game, because that's what we're playing. So there's a few things we're doing which obviously they're not requiring to do it in real life, like looking at the map and getting rid of the clouds. You know, that's just, we don't do that in real life. So we're doing things like that in the simulator. You can also look up here on your travel to mode. You can see the stages that you're at. It's good just to have a look. We're obviously not needing to use that because we're not doing a travel to anyway. The nav log is also useful. Gives us some estimated times of arrival for the next waypoint. It's not the time all the way to the end for landing, it's just to the next waypoint. So keep that in mind. The ETE. If you're wondering if you can run off and get a drink and come back to your computer while you're simulating, how much time do I have before I need to freak out? Well, you can look up here and have a look. That will give you an idea just how much time you've got to go get a drink or make a coffee or make some tea and then come back. That's what it's important for when we are talking about simulation. But it's pretty much fine by itself at the moment. We're sitting at 3000. We can notice the glide select button is still below us. It'll be sitting basically at that number I told you guys about before, that 1750. That's where that's sitting. And in fact, let's go demonstrate that now. So we're going to drop our altitude to 1600. Okay, I'll try and put it more on the screen so we can see this number here. I'm dropping that number to 1600 now. We're going to change our VS, and then it won't do anything till I tell it to start going down. So decrease vertical speed, which is the up. You'll be rolling the button up, I presume, in real life. And down it comes. So now we're going to decrease. And we'll slowly get ourselves down to 1600. This is not the correct approach. Don't be doing all the way out here. This is very, very early. But we're getting ready. That's the important thing. We can always see what's active up here. So we know FMS mode is active. Like I say, that should always be FMS for the whole flight for an RNAV approach. You're not changing that. The only thing is you will need to hit the FMS initially after takeoff to enable it, because it won't be in FMS mode necessarily. So you'll need to switch it for that to get it enabled, to get your autopilot working in the first place. Your FMS, your autopilot button, your nav button, and if it's still not working, have a look up here and make sure that your AP trim is in on. That's all the things to be watching out for. Just want to keep adjusting my camera and put it back into my, I can look at my co-pilot seat and go back to landing. So we'll get to 1600. Now, what I'm trying to demonstrate to you guys is we should notice that this little pink dot is going to actually go above our current altitude, okay? So our centered altitude is around about here, and this little purple dot, so perhaps we'll call it, should be a little bit above where our current altitude is here. We'll notice this one here, and it'll be sitting at 1750, and we'll be at 1600. So we're a little bit below, so I'm making it really obvious to you. And that little purple dot will come down. It will hit us at 1600 and then drag us down to the runway on the correct glide slope. So that's what the glide slope will do. And then FMS will keep us lined up with the runway coming in straight. They'll just keep following this line all the way down. So that FMS will do that anyway. What enables this glide slope to start activating? Now you can notice it's just a little bit below. So this is 1600 and this is 1750 up here. Okay, or it's a little bit above. But that's what the 1600 is. So it's going to be a little bit above us, our current altitude. It's going to hold at 1600 now, and you'll notice it will go back to alt mode up here. Alt mode is now selected. All we need to do is we need to click on the approach button, and we need to click on the alt button. I think in fact all you need to do is click the approach button, but I'm just showing you what I'm actually doing. I'm going to click approach and I'm going to take the altitude off. I'm just doing that to be doubly sure it's not going to hold altitude. We don't want it to hold altitude. But hey, if I didn't mention it already in this video, this is the level button. If you're learning and you're just wanting to look at scenery outside and have a good time, this plane is so cool because it's got this LVL button, which will just level out your flight. It'll keep you flying straight as long as you've got enough throttle, which is probably the case. And yeah, you won't crash. And then you can look out the window, have a look at the scenery. You can jump to external view and just look around you and not have to worry about flying the plane. It's a nice, easy button that's available. It's just called LVL, and you can click that up here. Another cool thing to know about. We know if our gear is up or not, of course, by always looking here at the lights. So without having to look at the external, we know if it's green, it's down, and if it's no green, it's up. You can always see what the color is by clicking that button. Looking at the green there. We're flying quite straight at the moment. I think we can zoom this in a little bit more. Not necessary, but we can do that. There we go. Everything's going pretty okay at the moment. Also, you can look down here, of course, for flap information. Flaps are up at the moment. We've got a little way to go, but if we want to be doing things super duper early, we could also bring our gears and our flaps out and stuff. Our speed is a little high, not too bad. I'll start bringing her speed down. We can have a little look and see what the ATC has been telling us. They've probably been telling us to climb. Can you see this? Do you have? Please expedite your climb to 6,000. They'd still want us to be up quite high. We wouldn't be descending so early. So they would be following the approach paths to come down. We're still quite low. In fact, helicopters and things like that could be beginning to be in our range if they stay below 2,000. Well, we're already below 2,000 all the way out here, so they wouldn't be expecting that. Maybe 800 or something a helicopter, but they might go up to 2,000, be cleared. There are no helicopters in this game yet. Will be really exciting to see the engine for them. I know so many people are keen on helicopters and also gliders. Could be fun. They are unique. They handle very, very differently. I've used them quite a bit in DCS, Digital Combat Simulator. I think you would find they're a different experience. So we're coming along. We know we've got about 15 at the moment, this number up here, before we tackle that next objective. do a little sweep of a plane. Notice our air temperature now. We're so close to the ground, only 1600, and we can see it is now 29 degrees Celsius. So it's quite warm. 29 degrees Celsius all the way out here near Port Headland in Western Australia at this time of year. And you can see what the weather's like in this part of the world. Quite warm and very clear and sunny. Ground speed at the moment is 219 knots. We've brought it down towards the 200. And we'll try and land at around about 90 on this flight. So I'll watch my speed. We'll bring it down to about 120. So that when we are at when we're at the PPDNF, I'll be at about 120, and then all I'm doing is going from 120 down to about 90 to land on the runway. 120 down to 90 to land on the runway. Now, unlike the ILS, you may find this approach won't be quite as precise in the way that it comes in, but it will be very close. It will be very close. And then you can just do the final maneuvers to bring the plane in any time you like by just disabling the autopilot. Left click once and you can hand fly it in. But it will get you almost down all the way to the runway. And where this is important is if you can't see the runway, you're flying in like rainy conditions or storms, or you have no idea where the runway is, then you can use this to get yourself close enough so that you can see the runway. Then when you finally can see the runway, then you can disable the autopilot. If you can't see the runway still, or the conditions are so bad on the ground that there's heavy cloud still right at the ground, you'll have to do a missed approach. You'll have that option. But this will give you a chance to get as close as possible, to get that opportunity to make that decision. So still about 12 minutes there. This is the angle of attack information which can come up. You can turn that on or off. I have no idea why you would ever want to turn it off, but maybe. Maybe that's an option for you. This traffic inset, I haven't found does anything. I don't know where it's supposed to be doing it. Is there supposed to be traffic around here or something? Because I don't know. Maybe it does something in the real plane, or yeah, I don't know what the traffic inset does at this point in time. I'm aware that a lot of buttons don't work, but it's obviously we want to know as many buttons do work as possible and what they do. So yeah, that's what we're trying to do. Put our hot air on a little bit, can we? We can put some air on our feet, perhaps. Set airflow towards the cabin or the windshield. Set it in the middle. Just cruising along at 1600 here, and again you can see that little pink dot just a little bit above our altitude at 1600. It's going to be just above us. That's what I'm trying to point out. This fuel selector, I don't know why you would want to, but you can actually change it yourself manually, left to right, if you want to time it every 15 minutes or something. But we've got it on fuel select auto, so you don't have to worry about that. When you fly in some of the smaller planes, like your Cessnas and stuff, you've actually got to do this yourself manually. There is no option where you can just click and go auto. Some of them don't have that. Some do, but yeah, some of them don't. So you've actually got to keep an eye on that. Otherwise, your plane will become a little bit heavy on one side than the other. So just something to be aware of if you are flying a different plane. They don't all have this functionality. This is, I suppose, luxury compared to some of those other planes. But you still can do the same as what they do. So you can do it manually if you want. You can put it on manual, and then you can swap it and keep an eye on your time. Keep swapping between the fuel tanks and keep the plane nice and level. You do have that option, so that's cool. It's good that we've got that option. Now, some things I could think about would be the gears and the flaps. I'm probably going to put it out to full landing flaps towards the very end. So just before we come around to the corner. I think they would be putting the flaps on somewhere around here. Gear down, flaps, depending on what's needed. But this plane could slow down very easily by itself. It's a really good capacity to slow down. I don't believe it has any form of air brakes. I'm used to air brakes as an option from DCS, Digital Combat Simulator. But I don't think there are any air brake options on this plane. So you've just got the flaps and you've got the gear to slow yourself down, and then you've got your speed with the throttle. Coming a little bit closer into land now. We can see the moon. Look at the color of the water. Like, you've got this deep dark blue here, and as we look out into the distance, it becomes this different shade of blue. It's not just one color blue, the water, you know, and this is just at this one particular time of day in this weather conditions, but it's just that which adds a lot to the game. I believe it's going to look even better in the future because there's some layers missing or something in the game on release. This video is recorded very close to the first week of release of the game, so things could have changed by the time you watch this video, but it is really amazing to see the color change, the dark deep blue all the way to this light blue out in the distance. That's very, very cool. Very cool indeed. And of course, if you had a helicopter, you could take off and just land on that random island for fun and go back again. You can do things like that, but I think on this plane it'll be a little bit challenging. Other than the bush planes, of course, they could tackle things like that. They are also, of course, a lot of fun. But a lot less systems. It's more learning the flight model of the plane. They can go super slowly and still have quite good maneuverability. Some of the other planes. Click on GPS tracking mode and you'll get your plane on a map. If you ever go to this map, go off somewhere and you can't find your plane anymore, down in the bottom right it has GPS tracking. Left click that once and it suddenly finds your plane and you're good to go. So hopefully you find that useful. Isoline map will give you elevation, give you an idea if there's a mountain ahead or something. As I say, we're pretty flat out here. This couldn't be a safer place to practice, so it's super safe. I'm going to come in off the ocean and come around. Look at the colour now, it's gone like this dark brown colour. Just amazing. Anyway, we're going to jump into the plane, and I am going to begin to get our gear and stuff and keep an eye on our speed. So our speed is hopefully going to come down to 200 before I bring the gear out. I think you want about 170 before I bring our gear out, but I'm in simulation, so I'm going to bring the gear out right now. I'm pushing G. Down comes the gear. I have a look at our gears. There's the front one and the two side ones. They've come out successfully and they're holding, and we've got 3 greens. Okay. Now flaps. I don't think I'd ever do this, but I'm going to just put them to takeoff flaps at the moment because I don't want to slow down too much. I just want a little bit of flaps. 160, which is good. So the things I need to do, I need to click approach and then I need to click alt. And to watch it working, I'm looking up here at the G and I'm watching to see if this pink comes down to us and then comes down all the way. And where it's going to come down, we can tell from this. We know it is going to bring us down from 1750 at PPDNF. That's where it's going to activate. And PPDNF, when we look on the map, is here. And then we're going down to the airport. So that's where it is in relation to this flight plan. But this will work for any airport you like to do RNAV at around the world as an option. Once you can get VNAV working, then you can use it wherever you like. You can also then use ILS. If you haven't checked out my ILS video, please do. Hopefully that will help you if you haven't worked out how to do an ILS landing at all and are still trying to come to terms with some of the buttons and unique features of this plane. We've got an outside temperature today of now 29 degrees. It's looking very close to that on the ground. Not too much wind. Ground speed is about 166, and you can see that indicator speed here is 158. True airspeed is 169. Just checking, got that there. I have landing lights on. We did that super early, as you know. What you will want to do is perhaps change your seating position and get ready with rudder pedals, because you're going to have to. The other thing to be aware of is how can you get the plane into reverse thrust. If you don't know, you can push F2 on the keyboard. So as we hit the runway, use your rudder pedals at first to keep it level on the runway. Then, once you think you're stable and center on the runway, push F2 on the keyboard to get the reverse mode activated. You hold it down, don't just tap it, hold it down, F2 on the keyboard. And then once you've got your speed down below 80, 50, start using the wheel brakes. Apply your wheel brakes, left wheel brake and right wheel brake. Try and apply them evenly or as required to keep yourself straight on the runway. And then you should eventually come to a stop. And you can bring the throttle all the way back to idle. But you'll probably be in idle already as you're coming in on the runway before your wheels hit the ground. You've put it in idle. But if there's some reason it isn't in idle, definitely get it in idle. I'm not trying to go anywhere, we're just trying to stop the plane at that point. So, I wonder if I can zoom in a little bit more. Yep, there we go. And just have a little look at our fuel just for curious sake. We've got down to 30% left on both these left and the right. A few people were mentioning that if you wanted to save fuel, you could try using one engine in some of the dual engine planes. And also with some of the landing challenges, it may be easier if you just turned off one engine and tried using one of the engines on the double engine planes to try and make the landing challenges and get up the charts. Just some ideas. I haven't tried this. I have tried a plane when put one engine on, but I haven't really done a lot with the landing challenges. I do have a video of St. Bartholomew where I've landed every propeller plane in the game at that one airport and just put a timestamp to all the landings. There's a lot of landings in that video, but in this video we're only going to be doing one landing and it's coming up very soon. So we can see now we're going to get in 3 minutes and 25 seconds, we're going to get to PPDNG. And then very quickly things will happen as we come down to the runway. Things I need to do, I need to click approach and I need to click alt. So very heavy workload for me. I need to click two buttons, approach and alt. We'll set everything else up ready to go. We know we're in FMS mode and you'll notice this will stay in no data the whole time. Okay, there will be no data. That's the big difference with ILS. ILS, we're desperately wanting this to fill up with data, and with this mode we're not worried. We don't need to worry about any data in there. So hopefully I've made that aspect clear to you as one of the differences between ILS and RNAV that you can see in the sim. Always keep an eye up here, just tells you what's active and what's actually happening with the plane. Very useful. Our gears are out. We're unfortunately keeping them out for a very long time here. We're super duper prepared for landing. I think I might just get our camera around about here and we'll leave it there so we can have a look at it later. Can also just keep an eye on this map here. So it's going to turn and then turn again. At PP, D, and I is the point that I am going to hit approach and take off the alt. Okay, so it should level us up for the PP, D, and F. I don't need to worry about altitude because I'm already at altitude. I'm at the 1600 already. But in real life, they're very worried about altitude. They're trying to make sure that they've got to that altitude at that point for the descent. But I've gone and done all this way in advance, and the advantage is I'm now able to demonstrate to you that that little purple dot is above our current altitude. That's what I'm making really clear to you. If I was flying this myself, I probably wouldn't be sitting at 1600 already. I'd be doing something much more closer to the descent required, but just to demonstrate to you, I wanted to make it really clear to you that we're below the glide slope and the purple. At this point in time, we are in FMS mode, but we still have glide slope information. And you will get glide slope information with an RNAV. So if you don't have ILS at the runway you're going to land at, you have RNAV as an option. This is how we can execute it, especially just in particular plane in this game. We're coming very close to it now. Looks like we've got 30 seconds away. And the plane's going to make a turn again by itself because we're setting an autopilot with nav mode on. You can see that turn. Have a little look at that side. More interesting colours down here. We've got purple water now. Not going to concentrate on that too much. I'll just set my camera around about there. In fact, no, I want to zoom in so I can show you guys. I want to keep an eye on this. And we want to see what's happening with that dot as we come up. So we've now tasked the PPD and G. I said at the PPD and I am going to hit approach, and I'm going to very soon after hit the altitude mode off, okay? That's the two things I'm going to do at PPD and I. You can see down here, still no data. Active mode is FMS. So the data field's only relevant for ILS. This is RNAV. We don't have to worry about that this time. Coming up to PPD and I. It'd be pretty crazy if this all doesn't work after me explaining everything, wouldn't it? But I'm pretty confident this is going to work. So let's see how we go. Coming up to PPD and I need to get ready to push approach. The plane will turn by itself still. So we'll see that happen. I'll just show the outside view. We'll see the plane turn by itself. I won't change to view until there we go. It's turning by itself. I'm not touching anything. There we go. It's turning. Coming around. As soon as I think it's level, I will hit the approach button. This little pink dot, you'll notice, has not moved. It is still staying up there. And we're turning around. Pink dot has not moved. It will start to move when we get to this final point, PPDNF, okay? PPDNF, and then it will start to move. But what we are going to do is we're going to click approach mode up here. So can you see turn approach mode on? I'll just wait for it to settle. It's almost got to see it. There's the runway. It's got us pretty settled now. So up here, I'm clicking APR approach. When those nav lights gone out, approach mode's on. Okay. Now we're looking for this pink dot, and we're looking to see if this pink dot will come down to us, and then it will drag us down to the runway. I'm going to select this button up here, turn altitude mode hold off. Altitude hold mode is now off. I'm not going to do anything. You'll notice the plane's not doing anything until we get to the PPDNF. Notice it's still above us. I'll give you an outside view to give you an idea what's going on. There's a runway out there. Way out there where I'm circling. PPDNF, we're coming up to it now. We'll go back into the plane. We'll have a little look. One thing I need to do, I want to put the landing flaps on. So I can do things like that and just keep an eye on my speed. Can you see this pink now is coming down? It's coming down now. It'll collect us and it'll drag us the rest of the way down. I've brought our speed down to help it. Let's quickly look at where we're at. We're just almost at the PPDNF right now. We're sitting at just about 100. 1660 at the moment. 100. Here's the pink dot. Now it should come down by itself. Look at that. It's put us into 300, 450 dive. It's bringing us in on the glide slope now. Keep bringing your throttle back so that you're not going too fast. 1500, it's going to drag us all the way down to the runway. How good is that? That's RNAV, okay. So I'm not doing anything here. My workload is quite simple. Got the gear out, flaps out. The plane is bringing us down on the glide slope for us. All I need to do is manage our speed, okay. Very, very cool. This is really, really awesome. And good fun. Absolutely good fun. So please do give it a go if you haven't tried it before. Coming in on the RNAV approach. Now it's not quite as precise as what the ILS you may find. So you will have to at some point hand fly it in. It will get us very, very close to the point where we can make a decision. Can we see the runway? In this case, we can see the runway. So we're going to be okay. To disable the autopilot, we're going to left click once on here. Hand fly the plane just at the last moment. Still bringing us down. Can you see the little pink dot? We're down now to 800. It's bringing us down at 600 feet per minute, which is interesting, just as a good kind of glide slope number to remember. If you're trying to hand fly, maybe 600 or so would be a good idea. You can see us coming in. It's really getting us almost all the way there. So 600 now. It's keeping us in line with the runway and also bringing us down on the glide slope. Our speed's about 100. At some point I'm going to have to take over here, but I'm pretty confident we can see the runway now. So maybe about 400 or 300. I'll extend it a bit longer than normal, just so you can see just how far it can bring us down with the RNAV. But there you go, 400, still going. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to click autopilot over here, disable. I'm watching my speed. 300, it's got us all the way down to 300. That's pretty good for an autopilot. That's RNAV, yeah. That's pretty good, I call. 200, we're going at 90, looks good. So I'm going to disable autopilot now. One left click and we'll just hand fly it in. Throttles to idle. Wheels on the ground. I just put it in with the F2 on the keyboard for the reverse. And then I can let go of that, push the throttle forward just to get it back into forward mode, bring it back to idle and use the wheel brakes. You'll notice we'll come to a rolling stop and then the game will give us somewhere to go with some luck. There we are, we're completely stopped on the runway. And we're safely down and we're at Port Headland International Airport. We'll go choose the location to park at today. So we'll head over this way. We can see the tower and stuff up there. We can put our mode into taxi up here, just for taxi lights. You'd normally be talking to them and asking them, where do you want us to park, or can we taxi? I can bring my flaps up, pushing F5 on the keyboard to bring my flaps back in. We'll just zoom in a little bit. And we'll park somewhere maybe over here next to the big red plane there. We'll park on the left hand side of him. The black vehicle wants to do other things. That's okay. Really, really cool plane. It has good ground handling. I don't know, I really like the ground handling from a game perspective in this game. It's just really cool. Oh my gosh. There you go. It's giving us a parking spot. How cool is that? Didn't give us any information, but it suddenly has given us a parking spot. So that's cool. So we're going to park here. We are in the green square mostly. We'll move forward a little bit. There we go. Cool. So to shut down the plane, super duper easy. I'm just going to put the fuel tank to off. And I'm going to go up to here with one left click and put the crash bar down. And kaboom. We are finished our flight. I hope you found this video useful. Feel free to subscribe, like, and comment the video. If you found this video useful, please do share it. And I hope you have learnt something. Once you can do the RNAV approach, that will give you another option to land at a runway in tense or troubling conditions, if it's rainy or stormy. And it should hopefully add to your knowledge of the plane. You can go from here and go and learn more, but I hope that you have learned something from this video. Thank you very much for watching and have a great day. Bye for now.